Although he never revealed what might be lurking behind them, my father always claimed that a degree from NYU would open doors. Let me tell you about debt, not the kind that accumulates gradually over a lifetime of poor choices, but the crippling weight of student loans that descends on you as soon as you turn your head from right to left. 6 figures of debt make every job rejection feel like another nail in your financial coffin. My name is Sophie Chen, and I was sure that everything would be better for me when I went across a stage 4 months ago to get my degree in business administration. The key is education, my mother would say while counting tips late at night. Study hard, go to good school, get a good job. I did everything right, graduated top of my class in high school, got into New York University's Stern School of Business, maintained a 3.9 GPA while juggling internships and part-time work, and even started a successful business club on campus. The path seemed clear: graduate, land a job at one of the big consulting firms, make my parents proud. However, reality set in when 237 job applications, 83 interviews, and 0 offers were received. The post has been filled internally, and we're searching for someone with more experience. Your qualifications are impressive, yet you keep getting polite rejections. In the meantime, I relocated from my shared apartment in Brooklyn to a tiny studio in Washington Heights, the kind of place where the roaches pay the rent and the heating, as the loan payments became closer and my savings from working at the school bookstore diminished. My parents offered to let me move back home, but of course, the idea of going back to my childhood bedroom above the restaurant, which smelled of soy sauce and defeat, was almost worse than the debt. That's how I ended up scrolling through job listings at 3 in the morning, with my laptop's blue light shining on a pile of past due notices. The majority of listings were typical entry-level traps. In between advertisements for personal help and dog walkers, I noticed commission-only sales jobs that were pyramid schemes masquerading as entrepreneurial chances and unpaid internships that required 5 years of experience. A night cleaner is required. The Morgan Grace Building. Contact recruiting@morgangracebuilding.com. $70 per hour, immediate start, no experience required, must be detail-oriented and able to follow directions precisely, night shift only, 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. There had to be a typo in the salary. Desperation can suspend reality, but $70 per hour for cleaning was lawyer money, not janitor money. Despite the fact that it was the middle of the night, I received a response to my application within minutes. Dear M. Chen, your application has been approved. Kindly arrive to the Morgan Grace Building at precisely 11:45 p.m. tonight. All you need to bring is yourself, and everything will be provided. However, I would like to know if you are good at following directions. Department of Human Resources. The Morgan Grace Building. The Morgan Grace Building was unfamiliar to me, which was odd considering that I had studied business in Manhattan for 4 years. A Google search turned up nothing, no website, reviews, or news articles, just a Midtown Street address and one black and white image from what appeared to be the 1950s. My logical side warned that this was suspicious. No background check, no interview, but when you're facing $180,000 in student loan debt, necessity trumps reason. At precisely 11:45 p.m., I reached the address. The building. The revolving door moved silently, too silently for something made of glass and steel, and as I walked through the city's noise vanished completely, not muffled but erased as if someone had pressed a universal mute button. The only sound was the soft buzzing of fluorescent lights and something else that might have been whispering or might have been the building's ventilation system having a conversation with itself. The lobby was a monument to corporate excess, with 60 stories of glass and steel that vanished into low clouds, its windows reflecting the city lights in ways that seemed to defy the laws of physics. research on corporate sterility, chrome and white marble that appeared to have been polished beyond their typical sheen levels. The security station took up most of the room, yet for some reason, it made my architect father's voice reverberate in my mind. Poor design makes people uncomfortable. When proportions are off, the human mind can detect it. He was old, but in a way I couldn't quite pinpoint, not elderly, but ancient, like something that had been there since the building's foundation was laid. His uniform looked like it belonged in a black and white photo from the building's early days, and the fabric faded in patterns that moved when I tried to focus on them. The desk was too high, its angle slightly off, as if it had been built for someone or something not quite human. Behind it sat Mr. Kane, at least that's what his nameplate said. His voice had an echo that wasn't appropriate for the lobby, and his hands were pale and papery with too many knuckles when he pushed the paperwork across the desk. "You're the new cleaner," he said. "They appreciate that the acoustics arrived on schedule." I questioned him, but he chose to ignore me and instead tapped the clipboard with one long finger, making the initials here and here. "This is the blood type. Preferable contact method in this scenario of displacement, interdepartmental transfer of displacement." He made a seamless correction. At first sight, the forms appeared to be routine documentation. Standard employment agreements, waivers of liability, non-disclosure agreements, but when I attempted to read the fine print, the content appeared to change. The words rearranging themselves into phrases that made my head hurt. "Employee hereby acknowledges that linear time is a corporate construct. In the event of temporal displacement or existential reassignment, the company reserves the right to adjust reality as needed." As I signed, I noticed something strange about the papers. Hidden text seemed to appear and disappear depending on how the fluorescent lights hit the page. I tilted the clipboard slightly, and there they were, rules written in what looked like disappearing ink. Cleaning staff regulations. Rule 1: clean the offices in the exact order listed on the schedule. Do not skip. Any deviation disrupts the pattern. They notice disruptions. Rule 2: if an office door is locked, skip it and return in exactly 17 minutes, not 16, not 18. They count the seconds. Rule 3: avoid looking directly into any reflective surfaces after midnight. Rule 4: if the elevator stops at the 13th floor, do not exit. Close the doors immediately. Keep pressing the button until it moves. Rule 5: if you hear your name, do not respond. Rule 6: the water coolers must remain unplugged after 2 a.m. Rule 7: if you hear typing from an empty office, do not investigate. They're composing your resignation letter. Rule 8: all trash must be disposed of in reverse alphabetical order. When I looked up to ask Kane about the rules, he was gone. The rules continued, but they faded before I could read them all. The bins grow hungry if you mix them up. The security desk appeared to have been abandoned for years because it was dustier and older. I started on the 20th floor as instructed. The elevator ride was unnervingly smooth with no sensation of movement at all. When the doors opened, I was hit by a wall of silence, not just quiet but a complete absence of sound that made my ears ring. The floor was exactly what you'd expect from a high-rise office building: endless cubicles, glass-walled conference rooms, and corner offices with impressive views of the city. But something felt off. The cubicle walls seemed to shift slightly when I wasn't looking directly at them. The distance between offices appeared to stretch in contract. As I walked, I pulled out my cleaning cart and checked the schedule. First up was conference room 20A. Simple enough, but as I walked toward it, I noticed something strange about my reflection in the glass walls. It wasn't matching my movements exactly. There was a slight delay, like a video feed with lag, and sometimes when I turned quickly, I could have sworn my reflection was smiling when I wasn't. The conference room itself was immaculate, which was odd considering it was supposed to need cleaning, with the exception of a solitary dot in the middle that appeared to track my motions. The whiteboard was entirely blank. The chairs were all pushed in at exactly the same angle, and there was a single pen lying exactly parallel to the edge. As I was wiping the table, I heard a distinct sound that made my blood run cold: a chair pushing back from the table. However, when I turned around, I realized that it was all in my head, just my nerves from being alone in a strange building. Then I noticed condensation forming on the window, as if someone was writing them from the other side. I told myself that this was just my imagination. I listened to the typing on the door. Stopped right away, and the sound of a chair took its place. Wheels moving across carpet as they approached the door, followed by a voice that is hardly audible. "We've been waiting for you, Sophie." I staggered out of the door, my heart racing, and started typing again, but it seemed like several keyboards were a little out of rhythm, making a cacophony of clicks and clacks that appeared to follow me down the corridor at precisely 12 in the morning. The fluorescent tubes hummed at a lower frequency, casting as all of the floor lights dimmed at once. Shadows that weren't exactly the same as the things that cast them despite being fully charged. My phone's screen flickered and died. Ed, I had to get to the next floor, but I was terrified of using the elevator, even if the timetable was obvious. The first rule, which was repeated to me on the 21st floor, is to clean the offices in the precise sequence specified. Without omitting any. When I walked inside the elevator, I heard a faint ring that sounded almost too melodic, like someone humming a tune a little out of tune. Between floors 12 and 14, there was a button marked 13 that I could have sworn wasn't there before. The elevator shuddered and stopped when we reached the 12th floor, and the display flickered between the numbers before settling on 13. The corridor beyond was incorrect in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. It stretched impossibly far, with walls covered in what appeared to be outdated wallpaper that moved and swirled in patterns that hurt my eyes. The fluorescent lights flickered in sequence, giving the impression that the hallway was breathing. I remembered Rule 4 and rushed for the closed door button, but before the doors could shut completely, I heard rapid footsteps coming from the darkness along with the sound of something being dragged. A distorted but distinct voice shouting my name, "Sophie," joined us in accounting. When the doors finally closed, the voice was cut off mid-sentence. The elevator then started to ascend again, but now I could hear faint whispers coming from the speakers that normally played music. If I focused, I could make out bits and pieces of conversations. Her paperwork was almost finished. She just needed to sign in triplicate for a permanent position. When I got to the 22nd floor, my cleaning schedule had changed once more, and new offices had been added. The writing was done in the same wet ink that never seemed to dry. Office 2213 has to be cleaned when the moment is appropriate because one entry drew my attention. I discovered 2213 locked, but according to my watch, it was precisely 17 minutes later. The door opened smoothly, revealing a beautifully preserved office from the 1950s. An antique typewriter sat on the desk, its paper still moving as though someone had just finished typing. I read the words on the page notice of the permanent employment employee carefully. Sophie Chen works the night shift. Tonight is the eternal start date and end date. The typewriter started to move on its own after the paper was topped with a post-it note that said, "You're next. We see you read the offer letter, welcome to the team, and your orientation starts as the keys strike the paper with sharp metallic sounds." I then moved away from the desk, knocking over a cup of pens as they hit the floor. Rather than dispersing, they formed an arrow that pointed toward the enormous window in the office that was beyond the glass. The city lights appeared to be in the wrong places, and some of the buildings were moving slowly across the skyline like ships at sea. It was past midnight, and I was reminded to follow Rule 3, avoid looking directly into any reflective surfaces. However, in a glass and chrome office building, that was practically impossible, and every window, computer screen, and polished surface appeared to be moving, so I made the mistake of glancing at the window. My reflection was standing there, but it wasn't moving in tandem with me. Instead, it was motionless, smiled, and had too many teeth. Behind it, I could see other reflections that appear in the shadows. Office workers dressed in antiquated attire move erratically and incorrectly, resembling marionettes with tangled strings. In my panic, I ran to the bathroom, not realizing that it would be crowded with mirrors. I spotted them as soon as I pushed open the door. I saw dozens of slightly different versions of myself reflected in the mirrors indefinitely. Some wore vintage cleaning uniforms, while others wore business suits from various eras, and they were all grinning that same awful smile. As if it were a thin membrane, one reflection moved forward and pressed against the glass. The surface of the mirror rippled like water, and my hand, which had too many joints, started to reach through. Panicked, I threw my cleaning cloth at the mirror, and the glass broke, but instead of falling, the shards hung in midair. Each piece contained a miniature version of myself, each of which was trying to escape its glass prison on its own. "We need someone with your qualifications," and their whispers filled the room. "Stay with us, and the benefits package is amazing." Every page of the cleaning schedule I was holding was now filled with the same task that was repeated endlessly. Clean office 1313 on floor 13, clean office 13113 on floor 13, clean office 1313 on floor 13 at the bottom in fresh ink that dripped like blood. If I didn't finish the tasks assigned to me, I would be reassigned immediately and permanently. When the doors opened and the elevator came without being called, all of the office chairs were inside, arranged in a circle, facing outward, and rocking slightly as though they had just been vacated. A nameplate had appeared on each of them, with various versions of Sophie Chen worked as a night shift supervisor from 1950 until 2023. It was 3:15 a.m. on my watch. My itinerary indicated that I had to leave the building by 3:33 a.m. "If you don't leave, you'll be hired permanently." The elevator appeared to move slowly, taking longer to go from one floor to the next. The numbers on the screen occasionally flickered, indicating floors that couldn't be reached. -13 square less than 16 infinities TK at 3:28 a.m. The office chairs kept moving softly, and the nameplates changed each time I blinked. Between levels, the elevator trembled to a stop. I could see them during the brief periods of darkness as the lights flickered. "Your resume is so outstanding, and we provide a great retirement plan." I was surrounded by whispers from innumerable former employees who were packed against the elevator walls, their bodies deformed as if they had been squished into the metal. The night shift never ends. As I proudly opened the elevator doors, I met with a dimly lit stairwell. The emergency lights provide a sickly green glow that gives the steps the appearance of movement. As I began to descend, I heard the distinctive sound of dress shoes hitting metal, rippling like waves in a dark ocean. Just a few flights above me, hundreds of feet plummeting in perfect synchronicity, 3:30 a.m. Every time I looked up or down, the spiraling stairs in the stairwell seemed to go on forever in both directions. There was no reason in the signs for the various floors. Yesterday, at 3:31 a.m., I heard footsteps approaching from behind me on floors 7 and A2 on the question mark floor. The walls started to perspire what appeared to be ink, and when the droplets formed into performance assessments and business letters, they ran down the walls. My name was on every one of them, along with employment dates that went back decades. I hadn't lived through 3:32 a.m. When I eventually entered the lobby, I noticed that the modern decor had been replaced by an odd mashup of office designs from each decade the building had been in existence. There were now dozens of Mr. Kane's security desks spread out in a maze, each manned by a different incarnation of him. The exit was shut, but I could still see the city outside through the glass doors. However, it appeared incorrect, with buildings crooked at odd angles and streets that folded in on themselves like a suspicious strip that my watch displayed. At 3:33 a.m., I sensed that the world was solidifying around me, and then I noticed the dim glimmer of an emergency exit sign with letters that were constantly shifting out of existence. I ran for exile, breaking all the rules I had been given. The building's floor moaned. I felt as though I was sprinting on liquid glass as it rippled beneath my feet. As I pushed against the emergency door, I heard a sound like tearing paper, the barrier between realities, and it felt heavier than it should have, as though the building itself was attempting to hold it shut. Destroying the stairwell beyond stretched down into infinite darkness, but I didn't hesitate. I ran behind the building's voice, which was 1,000 whispers combined into one, and it said, "Your 2 weeks' notice has been denied." When I looked back, the Morgan Grace building looked completely normal, just another glass tower reaching into the sky. A man in an expensive suit walked past me, giving me a strange look, and he entered through the revolving door as if nothing was wrong. For a moment, I caught his reflection in the glass, and I threw away my cleaning schedule, watching as the paper folded into an origami crane and flew away. I vowed never to return, not for any pay, but the building had other plans. My apartment had changed when I got home. The furniture was set up more like an office waiting area, and the layout seemed a little strange. The door to my bedroom had a nameplate. Sophie Chen works remotely. A new email was open on my laptop. Your home office has already been set up in accordance with company standards, and all reflective surfaces are now company property. Your reflection has been moved to the night shift. Thank you for your exceptional performance during the trial period, Ms. Chen. We are happy to offer you a permanent position with our organization because the Morgan Grace building believes in a flexible work environment. Sincere welcome to the team. Even though my hand is still wearing a company badge that I have never owned, sometimes late at night I hear typing coming from my closet. Performance reviews slip under my door, evaluating jobs I haven't done yet. My kitchen has a water cooler, which I keep unplugged, but every morning at 2 in the morning. Human resources floor 13 in my bathroom mirror, my reflection waves at me. There is a desk with my name on it waiting for all music to play, and somewhere in that maze of steel and glass in an office that exists constantly, I hear it boiling. The Morgan Grace building also doesn't let go of its employees lightly.